Cities are defined by their cultures. Those cultures could entail sports or business or certainly arts and entertainment. Oklahoma City is thriving in all of these areas, but who makes that all happen? This Town OKC explores the people behind the cultures, their origins, their motivations, their challenges, and their dreams. I'm Rick Allen Lippert. I've been in this town for over 50 years with a front row seat to seeing the culture grow from a dusty bus stop on the Southern Plains to a flourishing destination. Join me as we meet the folks behind the culture on This Town OKC. Mike Knopp, thank you so much for being on This Town OKC.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I know you're so closely associated with river sport. I mean, that's a given. And we'll get to how that came about in a little bit.
Okay.
But this is an oral history podcast. Mm-hmm. And I know you have a lengthy history with Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
So first, tell me where you're from. Where'd you go to school?
Well, yeah, I've kind of got. I had an interesting childhood in that I was actually born in Kansas City, and my dad worked for the federal government. He was an ATF agent, and so because of that, we moved around a little bit. And so I grew up in Minnesota, spent a lot of time on those lakes, which probably explains some of the water ties that I have. Growing up with my dad, and it was great. He was a fisherman, and we'd go out to the land of 10,000 lakes and tried a lot of them out. And then he got transferred to Washington, D.C. when I was in middle school. And so I lived in Annapolis, Maryland, and I would see the Naval Academy rowing every day on my way to work. On my way to school while my dad was taking me before he went to work. And it always just stuck with me. I thought that's really cool, and something I wanted to do. And then he came home one day and he said, I just got transferred to Oklahoma City. And I thought, well, there goes that idea. And ended up, we moved to Edmond and went to Edmond Memorial High School. I was a junior in high school when we moved here.
What year was this?
That was around I'm dating myself here, but it was about 88.
Okay.
And then I graduated from Edmond in 1990, and then went off to Oklahoma State and went to Stillwater for my undergrad.
What did you major in?
I majored in economics with a minor in business administration. I had an interest in law school. Again, my dad being, having grown up around his law enforcement career, I thought, well, that was of interest to me, but I was looking for something to get engaged in at OSU, and I'll never forget I was, in the dorm at Kerr Drummond, and the elevator door shut, and there was a poster of a guy holding an oar, and it said "Join Crew," and I thought, you got to be kidding me! I saw that in Annapolis. They have that here at Oklahoma State, and so I immediately called the number, and they said, "Well, meet us at the YMCA." In Stillwater at 5:30 in the morning. I said, well, okay, I'll do that. And for a college kid, that was a little challenging. And,
yes.
And I showed up and we carpooled. They took me out to Lake Carl Blackwell on a February morning. It was miserably cold. And they put me in a launch to watch the team on the water. And I was just surprised they had a team. And it was very much, if you can imagine, probably the worst conditions for the sport of rowing that there could be. That was probably close to it. And if you've watched the movie The Boys in the Boat or read the book, the equipment that OSU had at the time was kind of that vintage. I mean, old, they were scrappy. They just pulled together what they could. They had a tin shed as a boathouse, and it said Margaritaville on the side. It was just, but something about it really drew me to it. And I went out the next day, and I kept going out, and something about the camaraderie, the teamwork, maybe a little bit of that underdog aspect and the grit, just really stuck with me, and it was just a fabulous experience. But really, that I can track all of what's happened with here in Oklahoma City with the river back to kind of experiencing and getting into the sport at Oklahoma State.
And that was your freshman year?
That was my freshman year, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so did you row all 4 years?
all 4 years, and just kind of to underscore the kind of the scrappiness of OSU's team. I mean, again, old equipment and all of that, but we worked hard, and we were out there every day competing against some big schools, but always underdogs. And
where would you compete?
We went across the Midwest up to race University of Wisconsin, down to Texas, and then some. We made our way out east a couple of times. Of course, rowing is a lot of times associated with the Ivy League, and of course, at that time the sport was really growing outward, and we just didn't have a lot of resources, and we just made it work. And it was just, again, about this, it's the quintessential team sport. I mean, you have to pull together to make that boat go anywhere. And we had to kind of work extra hard because we had these big, heavy wooden oars, and, it was just it. But it was really kind of I look back at it, really kind of a magical experience to go up against this, like, it was really difficult conditions, but it was just, you kind of learn a lot going through that. And I think it really stuck with me.
So was this an NCAA sanctioned sport or more of a club?
At OSU, it was a club because, again, they just didn't have many resources. Although my junior year, the athletic department, they actually let us award letters because they were
Nice.
very, very committed at that time. But again, to underscore, there was just not a lot of reaction, and actually ended up helping coach my junior and senior years.
Good.
So anyway, that really stuck with me. And then I went off to get my law degree, and I switched to the other side to University of Oklahoma, and went down there to law school, and just continued to stay connected to the sport at that time.
And did OU have a rowing club?
They did not. They had no club. And in fact, I remember sitting in the class with my law school classes thinking, gosh, there's so much opportunity. We need to start a team. But, in law school, it's kind of hard to do.
Exactly.
But I would always use rowing or trying to get on the water as kind of that escape and that, stress relief. And during my time at OU, interestingly, my girlfriend at the time, she's my high school sweetheart. We got together in Edmond, and then we were dating, and I thought I had found this like gold mine because I had stumbled across this little sort of abandoned boathouse at Lake Overholser here in Oklahoma City, and this was in 1996, and so I was in law school. It was my second year. And I thought, oh my gosh, if you haven't been out there, and there's the lake, and then the North Canadian River runs along the lake, and for those who, at the time, no one knew much about rowing in Oklahoma City, and I'm like, gosh, this is really an ideal venue. And sure enough, there was an old boathouse, and so I called the number on the sign, and turned out it was like overrun with cats, and it was just kind of things, and some guys put this building together back in the late 70s. They had rowed in college, and it was kind of like an old boys club. They kind of did this thing, and they were really great folks, but they never really built it into a big community organization. And in fact, at that time, it was pretty much abandoned. There wasn't a lot going on. So
I do remember seeing some rowing in that Laguna area, just on the east side of the lake.
That's right, and that's where we did it. And in fact, going back when we talk about the Olympics, our first Oklahoma City's real first kind of engagement, I guess you would say, with the Olympic movement was when we had the Olympic Festival in here in 1989.
Yes,
which was the year after I moved here, and I'll never forget. I mean, I was like this whole '89 event. I mean, I still remember, going to some of the events, and one of the events was the rowing event at Lake Overholser. So they did have interaction with the sport at that time. And so, but 96, which is when we discovered this, was an Olympic year. And that was when the Olympics happened in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And so my wife and I were really excited I had a relative who was volunteering in Atlanta. We went out, took a road trip, drove out there, and got to be involved in the Olympics, and went to the rowing events, and came back so inspired and just very excited. And that was really what I think drove us to kind of clean that place up and really build it into, on a volunteer basis, into a community rowing club. My wife focused on kind of engaging youth, while I focused on how could I engage the college side of things, because I knew if we did those things, we'd create some momentum. And I was entering my last year law school, and I thought, well, why not? And I went to see if there would be interest in a rowing team at OU. And so sure enough, we formed a club and had a bunch of kids come out, students come out, and they had to drive a long way out from Norman to Lake Overholser.
Sure.
And it came on strong, and we had like 40 or 50 students from OU, and I should have backed up and said before I did that, I started the program at OCU. And the quick story on that was my wife and I having, really helping develop that program at Lake Overholser. I knew on the horizon was MAPS, and the MAPS project was going to put low water dams on on what we call the North Canadian River at the time. And so I had just graduated from law school and was an assistant DA in Oklahoma County, following that kind of law enforcement path that my dad kind of set. And so I would, at lunch, I'd get out and I'd go jogging, and I would jog down to I remember the canal being built, and I'd go to the end, and it was really a lot of weeds, and I make my way to the river, and it was, again, kind of like this big drainage ditch. But it was straight. And I'm like, I knew we were getting dams, and I said, once there's water, people don't realize this could be something fabulous. And so I just I'm like, who can I talk to? Who's there somebody I could share this vision with? And I knew that we were going to do a groundbreaking, or the city was, for the first dam on the river. And this was 99 now. Okay. And it was interesting because it was actually at the location that Okana sits at now. Okay. And it was the Eastern Avenue Dam. And I thought,
and that's the easternmost
dam. I thought, how do I make kind of an impression here? I didn't grow up here. I didn't know a lot of people. I wasn't connected politically within the community. And I'm just like, I got to figure this out, because this is a really amazing opportunity. And so it had rained just enough the night before of that groundbreaking. I thought, we're going to try to scramble and get some boats down the riprap and float it in the puddle.
There you go.
Behind the groundbreaking.
Great idea.
And it worked. And it ended up, that was what was on the front page of the paper the next day. Oh. And Admiral Ray Ackerman, great, civic leader for so many years, chamber president, OCU trustee, he called me. And he said, Mike, I love what you did. I'm trustee at OCU. We need to start a rowing program at OCU, Oklahoma City University. And I said, well, I agree. I've been wanting to do this. And he's like, well, how about if I can get you paid $1 a year if you can put this together? I said, done deal. And
I should add that Ray Ackerman's nickname, maybe not self-imposed, but Old Man River.
Old Man River, yes. And he embraced that. He loved the river. And so we became really great friends. I mean, you became really a mentor of mine. And we talked a lot, dreaming about what the opportunities could be. And so I formed this team at OCU. This is 2000. So it's actually the 25th anniversary of starting that program. And so I would go, I was able to get about 40 students at OCU interested, and we'd show up at Lake Overholser, 5:30 or 6 in the morning. I'd have my suit on, my big coat over the top, and I'd coach them. And I'd run to the courthouse, and then and my wife was getting the youth programs going, and it was just creating momentum. And I knew that with that dam being constructed, there would come a point that there'd be enough that the water would start backing up, and that we would be able to try to bring rowing downtown to the river. And so, of course, that was on my mind. I said, I had this idea for a boathouse, and, the way to make this really work is we would have to have something to create programming out of. And I said, who can I talk to about that? And And again, people thought I was somewhat crazy for this idea of a boathouse on what people attributed as this barren wasteland, or
Well, the joke
ditch.
was we had this big ditch. We had a river that we mowed twice a year,
and that was true, and we did, and so I started trying to just share this idea, and we've again formed this club in Oklahoma Association for Rowing. It was again very scrappy, kind of like my OSU days. We were just pulling it together, and I was able to kind of get this idea to somebody at Rotary, and they asked me to come speak. And I was this young guy getting up and talking about this boathouse on this yet to become river. And they're very nice, but I think a lot of people were like, oh, what is this guy? He's got a big idea, like kind of a little bit off his rocker. Yeah, bless his heart. Yeah, got a little bit of that. And as it happened, I knew that I had, I wanted to use to the advantage that we could the fact that this sport and paddle sports and rowing was going to be new for Oklahoma City. And it was interesting when you think about that opportunity, because rowing is the oldest intercollegiate sport in America. So it's older than football. It's older than basketball. Again, if you read that book of The Boys in the Boat, it really kind of gives you a feel for that rich history. It used to be the number one spectator sport.
No kidding.
And but it was new for here. Like no one really knew a lot about it. And I thought, how do I make an impact? We needed this boathouse. And I thought, well, we can do things our own way, because that's one of the benefits is no one knows I can do it in a way that maybe wouldn't do it at other places. And so I said, well, we're going to create, my idea is how do we make rowing like softball, and ironically, we're going to host softball as one of our Olympic events here. But in that, anybody can do it. We can have leagues, like you have softball leagues, and we're going to have rowing leagues. And that was sort of not something that happened. Like, usually people that were rowing had done it in college and whatever. And I wanted to say, no, rowing is like this perfect team activity. You come out with your coworkers, learn the sport. It may not be pretty, but you can go down the course and have a great time and drink a beer afterwards. And I felt like that could accelerate the culture building. How do we build a culture around it? So we started that at Lake Overholser, and one of the people that joined one of the first teams was Martha Berger. And Martha was an executive at Chesapeake, and I was, I had lunch with a lady with Leadership Oklahoma City, Beth Short, and I said, everyone told me Beth knows everyone. She can kind of maybe point you in some right directions. And I said, who do you think I should talk to about maybe a boathouse idea? And she said, well, there's this guy, Aubrey McClendon, and he named his company Chesapeake. Ironically, that's where I saw rowing for the first time on the Chesapeake Bay every day.
Right.
And
which is where the name of the oil company came from.
And so I thought, well, it kind of seems like water. Maybe he'd be interested. And so, he's very nice, but I think for a while he was kind of like, who is this guy? And I asked a few times, but Martha, being in the corporate team, helped me also visit. So he ultimately gave a couple $100,000 with the idea that this would help build the first boathouse. And for me, we needed to do something, and it was a very modest kind of idea of a building. And just to quickly fast forward, once there was water in the river, we said we need to have an event to celebrate the fact that now we have a river again, And so I invited some people I knew down, like Wichita State, and it was just a big deal that anybody would travel to get on our river, And so we cut the ribbon, and I invited Aubrey McClendon down to see this. And I was surprised when he showed up. And several community leaders, the mayor at the time, were there, Mayor Cornett. And when they saw the rowing on the river with all the teams, I think everyone's like, oh, okay, this is what an active riverfront can look like. And I'll never forget that evening, I was communicating with Aubrey, and I said, look, we could go one of two ways. We could keep doing what we're doing and build, get this little shed built to get things going, or, we could recognize that we truly have a differentiating world-class opportunity here on the river. And I explained that there's not many places in the world where you have a completely straight, sheltered body of water that isn't overrun with commercial navigation and other boats and things. And it was right there. And I said, we could become maybe the more unexpected opportunities for Oklahoma City. And he's like, we got to do it right. And so that's where he supported the idea of this vision of building a world-class boathouse, which became the Chesapeake Boathouse, part of the Oklahoma Centennial Project. And it was not you'd say Grandpa's boathouse. It was very much a very modern, forward-thinking. Right. We got a lot of people like, what are you doing? And I said, well, we're new. We're going to look to the future with this. And it was as much about sending a message to Oklahoma City that we're pretty darn serious about the future of this river, as it was about sending a message to the country and really the water sports world that you better look out for Oklahoma City. We're serious about this. And that was really a turning point. So
I think for those people who have been around Oklahoma City for any period of time, they've certainly know of Aubrey McClendon and his support for many cultural aspects of the city, in not the least of which was the boathouse district and getting that started. And that Chesapeake Boathouse is fabulous. I've been there a number of times. Yeah. It's really wonderful. How hard was it to get the other universities to build their own boathouses?
It's interesting. It was nothing's ever been easy. It's always been, like anything that is worth doing. It took a lot of convincing and effort, and I think, but I can attribute a lot of the momentum to a series of circumstances that all involve some degree of risk, and so I had to become very comfortable with that. And I would say, just as in a very quick manner, once we're building the Chesapeake Boathouse, it's really where my sort of life really took a turn from a standpoint of now we were serious about this. Like, we're building a multi-million-dollar facility, and this could be an important thing for Oklahoma City. And so Tom McDaniel at the time, who's president of Oklahoma City University, said, well, Mike, kind of proved that this could be something, and we're prepared to make this a varsity sport at OCU for men and women, and not just pay you $1 a year anymore, but make this a real thing, a real sport, on the condition that you do it. Like, we'll do it if you do it, which meant I had to take a leap of faith, leave my law career, which at that time I was general counsel at the FAA. Okay. And I'm like, that seems like an unconventional career path to go from being an attorney to a rowing coach. but I talked to my parents, and we were married at that point, my wife, and they're like, just go for it. You believe in this. And really, I attribute that to being able to really focus and lean into the opportunity. And so I took that on. And then ultimately, when the boathouse was built, also became executive director of helping lead the foundation. But I knew we needed to do something to really kind of underscore the opportunity for the river to others, to your point, to other, to maybe get additional investments. I'll never forget when we finished the ribbon cutting of the the Chesapeake Boathouse. Aubrey looked at me and he said, "You're not done yet, are you?" And I said, "No, I'm not. Are you?" We're like, there's a whole thing we could do here.
We're just getting started.
And so the idea of one boathouse became a vision for a boathouse district, which again seemed like crazy to anyone around the country who thought Oklahoma City was going to do this.
Yeah.
And
the place is going to be filled full of tumbleweeds.
Yeah. And but now that I had OCU involved, I'm like, let's build an OCU boathouse. But my vision for that was I wanted everyone to be distinctive and have something unique that contributed to the mix. And I really felt like we wanted to plant a stake in the ground in Oklahoma City for the Olympic movement and say, this is a classic Olympic sport. We have a great venue. Let's not just build a collegiate boathouse. Let's build a high performance center and see what happens. It's kind of like, if you build it, they will come, kind of like our arena, that we built. And so for a small university like OCU, it seemed pretty wild to think we were going to take on a $10 million boathouse facility. But we had our first regatta, and I invited Harvard. And people thought, well, that's crazy that you would invite Harvard to, and are they really going to come, this classic team? And then I invited the Olympians because this was the year of the Athens Olympics. And so
And what year was it?
This was 2004.
Okay.
And the Olympic gold medalists, the U.S. team won the gold medal that year. It was a big deal. I'm like, they got to come to Oklahoma City.
Yes.
And I invited the stroke man, who was the guy who was leading that boat. His name is Brian Volpenheim. He came and I said, you're going to help us, if you would, break ground on the first boathouse. That's when we were starting the construction of the boat, Chesapeake Boathouse. And I had Harvard race. And people thought that was a stunt, like we were just doing it, and they came out and they loved the experience. And the Olympians were like, this is a really cool venue. And then we had 10,000 people show up at this regatta.
Right.
And because I tried to make it more than just a regatta. We had music and an arts festival. I mean, we kind of tricked people into the fact that now we're making them fans of the sport. They just didn't know what they were coming to watch. And as it turns out, it really resonated and became one of the OCU's largest events in their history. And it became a really big deal. And Harvard had a great time. And so then that word spread. And so I say all that because that momentum started to take over. Devon Energy got engaged and saw, this could be a great opportunity to do the next big thing. And that became the Devon Boathouse.
With the finish line. Don't they have the finish line?
And then following that became the Finish Line Tower, which was the anniversary project for Chesapeake Energy at the time, 20th anniversary project. And there was just a series of things that happened, and some of all which was not easy, or there were challenges. And I would say one being in 2007, I'm like, for me to build a momentum around this idea of a $10 million boathouse that's going to be an Olympic. I was saying it could be an Olympic training site. No one believed me. And I said, we got to bring Olympic teams here from around the world. And there's no way we were going to get a world championship because no one knew of Oklahoma City. So I just made something up. And I said, we're going to have the World Challenge. And it's the things you do, and you look back, you're like, you just had to do what you had to do. And here in Oklahoma City, people didn't know, any different. It's a world event.
Exactly.
I just kind of made it up.
It's not the World Championship, it's a World Challenge.
And so I traveled to the actual World Championship in Germany thinking, I'm going to recruit some teams to come to Oklahoma City. And I was kind of maybe naive, and I kind of snuck my way into the VIP area to do what I needed to do, talk to the coaches.
And you had business cards?
Oh, yeah, I made it up, made the whole thing, and I was ready to go. And I quickly realized that people didn't know anything about Oklahoma from a standpoint of water sport. They had the typical stereotype of, you're from Oklahoma, like, do you have water, blah, 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 and
Dust Bowl.
Dust Bowl. And so I'm like, I left Munich, and I already committed to this World Challenge with like one team committed, and it was the Republic of Georgia, which was, not like, it was great that we had a team, but it wasn't like the Olympic gold medalists or anything. So I came back, I'm like, we got to pull this off or it's going to be embarrassing. And so I called U.S. Rowing and said, could you really try to get another team and help us? This is good for the sport. So they called Canada, and Canada said, well, it's not that far. We kind of have our opening in our schedule. This is the year before the Beijing Olympics, so typically teams aren't trying to do something new. And these were the actual Olympic teams, not just their B team, and they decided to come.
Great.
And once they came, the Czech Republic showed interest, and they said to me, we will agree to come if you can do one thing for us. And I said, okay, what is that? Arrange for our Olympic team to ride Harleys on Route 66. I'm like, we'll do it. We'll figure it out.
Done. Got it.
Done it. And so once they committed, Australia committed, then New Zealand committed, then Germany committed. So we had this like real full-scale international event that I made up, in 2007, and it went really well. and so then I had on camera the chief operating officer of the U.S. Olympic Committee say, this is an amazing, remarkable venue. The Australian coach said this is one of his favorite venues and events he's been to. And we got that on video, and that was like really powerful.
Sure.
And that helped us really propel the vision forward. And ultimately, the success of that and proving we could do that led to getting the Olympic trials in 2008 for the Beijing Olympics for canoe kayak. And of course, like everything else, a big story, flood before that event, challenge, lost a truck in the river, blah, blah. I mean, there's a whole story that we need to write a book about someday.
Yeah.
But we pulled it off, and it went well too. And that led to us becoming an Olympic training site. And so you can just see the milestone after milestone, challenges, adversity led to, and I always attribute it back, maybe it's that grit at OSU, you know, you're pushing through when it was tough. Yeah.
From my perspective, I've only been here 55 years or so, but that seems like a very Okie spirit kind of approach that don't dare tell me I can't do it because by God, I'm going to go do
figure it out. Yeah. So that was really part of the way we and I can track all of that up to ultimately, you know, where we are today on the amazing opportunity to host the Olympics, you know.
So, well, now I've been chastised. We're not supposed to say we're hosting the Olympics. We're a venue for the Olympics.
Well, yes, and there's a way to say that. We're hosting the canoe slalom event in partnership with LA28. Yeah. They're the host. But you know, the interesting thing that's so powerful about this is this is just not a token sort of side venue. Like LA28 is truly embracing the fact that Oklahoma City is a true venue partner, you know, of the Olympics, to where, you know, we are going to be an Olympic city.
Yes.
And this is making Olympic history in what is being done here. So it's, you know, again, going back to the drainage ditch. I mean, who would have thought? And I think I've said to a lot of people, you know, it really has paid to be different and to lean into something that, you know, other cities didn't do, and it positioned us to be in this incredible, position to do something that forever could help change people's impression. When you're on the largest platform in the world, you know, no one now is going to think we don't have water in Oklahoma.
Exactly.
So
how did the whitewater facility come about?
Yeah. Well, you know, I tell this story, and it's interesting that it came about, believe it or not, about in the early years out of Lake Overholser. I said, you know, if we're going to take on trying to create a world-class water sports venue, and again, my background was more in rowing, I said, yeah, it'd be great we covered all the bases with paddle sports. And at that time, I was envisioning, could there be something that's done around the dams to create like a whitewater feature? So I found out, I called upon people I had heard were whitewater paddlers in Oklahoma City, and we had a little meeting on the patio at Lake Overholser at that old boathouse. And I said, what do you think about this? And people were like, oh, this would be really cool. And so I threw these ideas at the city. And of course, I think people thought I was a little crazy. And as it turns out, we found out there wasn't enough flow in the river to where that could really be effective if we were to do that. So I sort of tabled that for a while. And we went on our way. We built the venue. But then I watched as Charlotte, North Carolina, built and opened a fully artificial whitewater course. And so this is about in 2006, 2007 timeframe. So I kind of brought the idea up again, and I said, what if, you know, we were able to do something like this? Had no idea how we were going to do it, but I said, well, could we commission a study? So we were able to get some people together to help pay for a study on that, and that study ultimately led to a document that I was able to use to promote the idea as one of the many ideas for MAPS 3. And I pitched it to the chamber. Again, I think people thought it was a crazy, wild idea, but I would say, you thought that about rowing, and look what happened. And this could be another great opportunity. And the key point of that was it's different. No other city is doing this sort of thing, and especially no one in their downtown area. And so I was able to convince the city leadership or the chamber leadership we were all doing kind of a lightning round of pitches. And I pitched it, and I got them to go to Charlotte to see that. And once people saw that, I think they started to understand the possibilities. And ultimately, long story short, it made the MAPS 3 ballot. It was all, as did some other projects like stadium lights for the river. We had experimented with that. And I said, well, what if in the spirit of doing different things here and innovating the sport, talked to OG&E, and we said, well, what if we made night racing a thing here in Oklahoma? It had never been done before in the sport. Yeah. So they helped us, and we brought in these big trucks that lit up NASCAR events. And said, what if, could this work? And we tried it. And it was crazy, and the athletes were wearing sunglasses. It was so bright in the race. But people from all over the world heard about it. And so it became a signature thing that we did. And so I said, with MAPS 3, we wanted to make that permanent. And that's where we got stadium lights into that mix as well. So even to this day, we're the only venue in the world to have permanent lights on our river like this. So
I know your time is short. I want to talk about plans for the Olympics. It's the whitewater canoe slalom events, not rowing.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, you have to understand that it was not in LA's, plan, so to speak, to do anything outside of Southern California. And in fact, in their bid packet, when they submitted their bid to the International Olympic Committee, they had a whitewater facility planned in Southern California. In fact, they came out here 7 years ago. I got a call. I knew a guy just through the years of working in the Olympic movement. It's so much about relationships when you're dealing with this sort of thing.
Of course.
And he knew me. We called and said, we need to take a tour and do some research because we got to figure out how to build one of these things. So I took these LA28 people on a tour. They had just won the bid. And I think when they saw it, we had just opened not long after, and they were like, oh my gosh, this is like a big deal. And I'll never forget standing in the pump house, which is a pretty engineering marvel, and I said, look, we could make it real easy and just have it here, and I was kind of joking, but kind of not,
Yeah.
And they kind of smirked. Turns out they took that fairly seriously.
Yeah.
And they talked to their mayor talked to our mayor. We ended up having a deal where our Mayor Garcetti came out. We took him rafting, and it was something that evolved over it was the hardest secret we were into silent. We couldn't talk to anyone about this for many years.
Yes.
Many years. I was like, but we had to, it was unbelievable that this became an opportunity. And the reason I wrote a letter for the mayor. We kind of collaborated on this pitch. And the pitch was Oklahoma is, we have the longest stretch of Route 66, the road to LA. So we're connected via Route 66. Will Rogers is from Oklahoma.
Right.
The world's greatest Olympian is from Oklahoma, Jim Thorpe. We have the LA Dodgers, the AAA affiliate. Yeah. We have Native American culture that we could really amplify. And the real point that I wanted to really resonate, and it seemed to resonate with them, is we can make this the Olympics for Middle America. There hasn't been an Olympics in Middle America since 1905. And so within driving distance, you have Dallas, Kansas City, all the way out to Nashville, to Denver. I mean, it's a huge opportunity and make the Olympics connect to so many more people. And so LA was all in, and we just couldn't announce it really until just last year.
Yeah.
And so now it's really game on. We've got under 3 years. And for us, we had to also make this the idea and embraced by the International Federation, Canoe Federation. If they didn't go for it, it was going to be hard. And frankly, again, based on relationships and doing other events, they became to really, really respect and like Oklahoma City. They like our venue. Good. And so they supported. And part of it was we had to host a world championship, which we're hosting next July. So it's going to be
in July of 26.
Yes. So that's our first big test.
Not a challenge, a championship.
This is actually a championship, a full-on championship.
Good for
you. With about 50 countries coming. And this is really a call out to Oklahoma City that We want everyone to come experience this because it's going to really set the tone leading up to 28. You can volunteer. You just come out and become a fan. It's a really fun sport to watch. And we're going to really show the world that they made the right decision bringing this event to Oklahoma City for the Olympics. And, you know, it's the Route 66 Centennial. We're going to lean into that.
Sure.
We're going to have a lot of elements that I think will be fun for the public just to come and experience this new thing. And the other thing I thought I'd mention is we are debuting kayak cross, helping. I mean, it actually debuted in Paris, but it's a new discipline for the sport. Sports Illustrated called it the breakout sport of the Olympic Games in Paris. It's super fun to watch, and so we get to host that here. So we'll be awarding 6 Olympic medals in Oklahoma City for canoe kayak, and then 1 for softball. Softball came in once they made it back into the Olympics, once it just made sense to pair another event. So the amazing thing about this is Oklahoma City is going to have one of the, if not the first event of the Olympic Games will be from Oklahoma City with canoe slalom. It'll be the first thing on TV every day.
Every day,
Yeah.
the first thing on TV every day. I love that.
So just an amazing platform. And then we really want the city to come alive. So it's not just the events. I mean, when you go to an Olympics, there are thousands of people there that don't have a ticket. They're just there to experience that atmosphere of being in the place where there's people from around the world. And there's a thing called the Cultural Olympics, and we're going to lean into that too.
I've been to a couple of meetings about the Cultural Olympiad. Actually, the last one, they said, we can't call it that yet because of LA28 and yada, yada. But I know Carpenter Square Theater is already planning on having a special play during that month.
That's amazing. Yeah. And that's what was fun. Even in Paris, you have your app on your phone that's showing you where the events are, the venue, and you swipe it over and it shows all the cultural activations.
Yeah.
And it just allows people to experience your community. And like I said, we'll have if not hundreds of thousands of people that are coming up during this period of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's going to be wonderful. I have to follow up. Why not rowing?
Sorry about that. Yeah. So because they have a venue there.
Okay.
And so they were really,
I suspected that.
They were really, even though it's not an ideal venue, they're shortening the distance. Very interesting for the sport. And in fact, many of the LA28 folks who have been out here is like, it sure would have made sense to do that here too because of our world-class venue. The issue though is it just underscores that we're the only venues outside of Southern California. And the reason why we did the right thing, we were in the right place, that we invested in something that no one else had. They did not have a canoe slalom venue of any kind. And so that put us in a unique position. And so they did have a rowing venue. And I think politically, it is the LA28 Olympics.
Right.
So we're going to put our best foot forward with the canoe slalom. We're going to have a lot of teams likely be training here, for both rowing and paddling, and even softball, because once they made it back into the Olympics, no one can dispute the fact we have the greatest softball stadium in the world. So, that made sense too.
And I've read that part of the company line is the IOC as well as LA28 commitment to sustainability and not building venues that are used one time and then discarded.
That's absolutely right. LA28's completely embracing that beyond probably what any host city has ever done. And in fact, I was in meetings yesterday, and it's they show the existing venues they're building, and then the temporary venues they're setting up, and then under the column of new builds is zero. Wow. Not one new thing is being built, and that is indicative of the new direction of the IOC. It also showcases, in our case, as I've explained to everyone, Olympic legacy is among the most important things that you need to think about when you're hosting events. What do you do with it? And for us, in Oklahoma, we're in this amazingly unique position, to be in the world stage in the Olympic Games.
Yes.
And so how do we
once in a lifetime?
How do we build our legacy around that? And so the fact we have an existing venue that's already in play, that's going to continue to developing, get people on the water. In fact, part of my vision is we're going to get kids and adults across the state involved in getting people on the water and engaging, not just on the water, but just, embracing the Olympic movement, getting, leading healthier lifestyles, where, the Olympics is about bringing people together. And rowing and what we do at the river is actually truly, literally about bringing people together in the same boat. Yeah. And so we want to really embrace that. And that's part of our legacy initiative. So 20 years from now, we could say that all these Olympians that you see competing wherever the Olympics are, we want to see many coming from Oklahoma. So,
Mike, I've been an admirer of yours for 25 years now. I'm glad we finally had a chance to meet. Thank you for sitting down and talking with me on This Town OKC.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and look forward to the next 2.5 years. And we want to emphasize to your audience, there's an opportunity for everyone to be involved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this has been This Town OKC, edited by Fred O. Bishop. I'm Rick Allen Lippert. This has been a Lippert Media production.